Chapter 4. Pressure Says Hi. Going back to grade 5, the former teacher was appointed as the new principal of a nearby school, so he had to be replaced. The school announced that we were expecting a female teacher who is originally from a school at Bisal, a nearby sitio. Our first day with her was quite awkward. To be completely honest, our first impression of her is a strict and a naughty teacher. But as time passed, it became exciting and very refreshing because she had a very amusing approach in teaching. For the third time, I was chosen as the school representative for the science quiz. Just like the past years, we started preparing for the district science and math festival. Unfortunately, my teacher was pregnant at that time, so she had to file for a leave as she was getting ready for labor. So the school hired a substitute teacher. The new teacher was approachable and easygoing. She would be the one to help me prepare. I was expecting a stricter and more precise monitoring, which is basically what I was used to. But somehow, she was too busy that she had less time to assist me in my preparations. Passed on with a huge pile of works, she had to finish all of it by herself. So I understood her frequent absences on my review sessions. However, she kept on telling me that I knew things better and I could manage myself. Her words were like baggage weighing me down. I carried a load of pressure. It was stated in the event guidelines that we were required to pass our own questions for the quiz B. I was so happy as I knew that would work on the contestants' advantage, but the problem was I didn't have enough time to go through the questions she passed. She said she was too busy to give me the reviewers she prepared. I was astounded. I didn't know what to do next. I was getting more and more discouraged. I was even more aggrieved by the 7 words that she told me as we walked to the contest room. Kaya mo yan, alam mo na eh. But crap, I wasn't well prepared. We didn't even have a proper review, which is really what I was anticipating. Losing that very day, I was devastated, not only because I lost, but because I was so disappointed with myself. I just felt that I didn't prepare enough. Somehow, I even began blaming my teacher. If only she monitored me strictly. Still, I didn't want to offend her, because nonetheless, I should be grateful that someone at least assisted me in my preparations. Reaching the house, I was afraid to knock. I was afraid my father would also be disappointed. I breathed deeply and opened the door. As I was entering, my mother is busy with her works as usual, and my father is reading books at the corner. I approached them. I held my hands together and stood straight. I cleared my throat and slightly bowed my head. I didn't dare to face them. I gathered my courage and muttered 3 words. I am sorry. Without me telling the other details, they just gave me a smile. It's fine, you did your best. I sighed deeply and forcibly wore a smile. I went to the bedroom. I sat on my bed. Did I really do my best? Was that enough? Wandering outside, those weeks were the worst. I would always hear people saying, I thought you were smart. Strange, you lost? Even though I knew that most of them don't really mean it that way, those words just really struck me so hard at those times. Joining in with my friends, I was afraid of doing anything because maybe just one simple negative word or gesture that I do or say will affect their whole perception of me. My whole body was trembling out of anxiety. Every day, I always had to pretend and wear a forced smile as they make fun of my loss. Months passed, even though I no longer heard those words of discouragement, I still held that feeling of disappointment. Anxiety piled up and I started aiming for a perfect peace in everything I do. But there was never a time I reached that perfection. There was never a time I achieved what I expected. I started to not be satisfied with my achievements. I worked my ass off to achieve the top of everything, but I always ended up killing myself. I disregarded my other achievements and yearned for the perfect award to cover my loss. Time passed and I started to seeing myself as a complete failure. I went through frustrations and self-blame. I was completely distracted and started being over paranoid. I didn't want to lose again. Chapter 5. Perfectionism Stubs. My perfectionism continued on for months. Subconsciously, I became over competitive. I didn't even realize that I was already hurting my closest friends. There was one time in grade 5 when we joined readathon, we met a boy who had a crush on my teammate May. He was continuously chasing after her and teasing her even during the time we were supposed to read books. On the contest proper, he still kept on teasing her and it became very annoying even for me. After the team quiz, she just disappeared from our sight. We kept on looking for her because it was her turn to compete for her assigned individual category, but she was nowhere. After a few minutes, we found her crying at the corner for the boy just won't let her go. She didn't want to come out. At that time, I was forced to take her place in retelling. I didn't know how it would go. I didn't know what to do. I didn't even know the guidelines. The teacher and my schoolmates urged me to do it. Without a choice, I just went to the contest hall. Though I wasn't really prepared for it, I reached for the doorknob and entered the hall. Facing the judges, it added more to the pressure I was feeling at that time. I did my best and managed to finish with a smile. That was one of the most terrifying moments in my student life. Fortunately, I was able to get fourth place. I was so proud of myself. For a moment, I was blinded by the cheers and praises from my teachers that I failed to realize that I was hurting my friend's ego. She didn't talk to me for days unless necessary. She didn't join me for lunch. She just ignored me. If I remember it correctly, it took me more than 3 days before we reconciled. There was another time during my first time joining campus journalism. I had this one friend who was also writing in the same category as mine. During the seminar before the contest proper, I wasn't really aware as I was completely focused in the discussion, but my friend slept all throughout the lecture. I didn't have the chance to wake her up. I was too focused that I was unaware that she was asleep. The contest proper came. She was struggling, so she approached pleading for me to teach her or tutor her, or for the least, give some tips and strategies to start her write-up. But I hesitated. I also wanted to win. I didn't want to disappoint my teachers and parents again. The competition has a time limit, and I also had to complete my piece. My mind goes back and forth wondering, should I help her or not? I was hesitating for minutes. Just after I decided to help her, we had no more time. Time is out. 3 words. 3 words of another disappointment. I myself wasn't able to complete my piece because I was distracted, but the next thing I knew was I lost another friend. She never talked to me ever since. I went home devastated. I didn't dare to tell my parents that I lost again. It was already dark when I reached home, so I went straight to bed. I was hesitating if I should share to my parents what happened. I was afraid they would also blame me. Monday came. I wanted to let it out, so I planned to share it to my teacher. But just as I was about to share, the thought that maybe they'll just blame me popped in my head again. That happening haunted me for months that I became more and more anxious. I skipped gatherings and didn't want to join my friends. I just went wherever my mother went. I tagged along everywhere. During those times, I embraced academics. I started focusing too much on achievements. I didn't want to socialize. Without realizing, I started losing myself. Chapter 6. Back on track temporarily. The school year was coming to an end. Our teacher is scheduled to come back. As they arrived at the teacher's quarter, I saw her rocking her baby. She was so happy. We wanted to welcome her, so I and my classmates went straight to the quarter after dismissal. We exchanged smiles. We happily chatted with the other teachers. I was playing with her baby when she approached me and jokingly said, "You have changed." I don't really know what exactly hit me that time, but I found myself droning into deep thinking. Three words that my teacher told me jokingly. Another three words. Is this another disappointment? Is she not proud of me? In what ways have I exactly changed? What am I in her perception? On my way home, I was still thinking deeply with a subtle frown in my face. One question comes with another and another. I reached home and, as usual, played Scrabble with my father. I read some of my favorite books, but then I found myself struggling to focus. Those three words kept replaying in my mind. Before eating dinner with my parents, I did my homework and, like any other day, started writing in my journal. But instead of writing, this day was the same as always, which is basically the foreword of almost all my daily journal. I wrote down the three words, "You have changed." I didn't know how to continue, so I just left my journal at the study table and went to join my parents in the kitchen where they are warming themselves in front of the furnace. We sat there and shared stories. I just listened to them. Then suddenly my father asked me, "How was school?" They suddenly asked me. I didn't know what to say, so I just simply told them. I went to visit Madam and played with Anne. And as usual, they told me their common phrase, "We are proud of you." 5 words. Those 5 words that I always hear every day had hit me differently at that very moment. I subconsciously whispered, "Am I even proud of myself?" These words kept bothering me for the whole night. I just couldn't forget about it. I stared blankly at the ceiling. Morning came. I wasn't feeling well. My parents told me not to attend school. My father went to work and my mother took care of me. As I was in the room, my mother was doing some paperwork in the living room. My eyes closed for a brief moment. Minutes passed as I looked down. I saw myself falling from a tall building. As I was reaching the ground, I screamed in fear. I opened my eyes and found myself soaked with sweat. Another nightmare. I woke up from the bed and went out to the backyard. My temperature was not that high, so my mother permitted me to just go out to feel the fresh air. As I was walking by the roses, suddenly those three words popped up again in my head. You have changed. I started overthinking again. I felt very uncomfortable. Then I saw a rose flower bud in my mother's mini garden. I remembered what she used to tell me. You should not touch the bud of a rose flower. Let it bloom by itself. You'll just destroy it if you forcibly open its petals. Somehow at that very moment, I went back to my biggest realization. I reminded myself for the third time, I shouldn't rush myself. I am still too young to put this much pressure on myself. I am still too young and there are many things I have to learn. As young as I am, I should cherish my time. Even a flower bud needs time to bloom beautifully. Going back to those times I felt the most pressure, I realized that it was neither my teachers nor my peers who built it up. It was me, myself. That very moment that I had the thought of achieving a bigger prize to compensate for my loss was the moment that I had touched, pierced my own flower bud, which was meant to bloom sooner or later. That very moment that I had the thought of achieving a bigger prize to compensate for my loss was the moment that I had touched, pierced my own flower bud, which was meant to bloom sooner or later. The next day, after my fever was relieved, I went back to school. I spent the day more freely than usual. I expressed my gratitude to my teacher, who basically was my wake-up call. I started opening up to her and shared my fears and doubts and the pressure that kept on bothering me at those times. She just listened to me. After that time, I tried to detach myself from my academics. I tried to socialize. Though I struggled to fit in and catch up with my friends' acts, I did my best to adapt. When I needed a break, as I am quite comfortable around elders during their free time, I would bond with my church mates who are mostly adults and with elders at our place. One of the elders I spent most of my time with is the woman who initiated us the land to settle down on. She was full of stories. I always enjoyed my time with her because her stories always come with wisdom. She was full of experiences in life. She was like an open book. She acted like my real grandmother and my best friend. She would tell stories from their time. She always tries her best to match with my interests as a teen. I came to a point where I completely ignored my academics. I became careless. Thankfully, my teachers and my ever supportive parents were always there to remind me of my priorities. They taught me how to wisely manage my time. They always guided me. The school year ended just like that, and I was very grateful to be awarded first honor. The former grade 6 teacher transferred to another school, so my grade 5 teacher's husband was assigned to replace her. Just like the first day of class we had with Mom, it was very awkward considering that he was the first ever male teacher I encountered my whole childhood. My grade 6 days was awesome. Realizing that my stay in elementary is slowly coming to an end, I learned to enjoy everything I do. I didn't aim for perfection but for the best that I can do. Learning from my past experience as the science festival was nearing, I spent most of the time with my science books. I didn't rely much on my teacher's guidance like how I always did during the past years. but nevertheless, he and his wife still helped me. Their support was what made me commit to winning the competition. I managed my time with the help of my teachers. I prepared well. I just wanted to make them proud of me again. Before the competition at the district level, I told myself, win or lose, what's important is I do my best. Though I had several self-doubts at that time, I tried my best to focus. I won that day and was able to advance to the next level. I traveled with my teacher. His sister, who is also a teacher, was with us too, so even though I was very nervous because of my fear of being around men, I remained calm throughout the trip. We went to Luubugyas, the host municipality for the Division Fest. During the competition, my teacher was outside the door. Though he didn't voice it out, I knew that he was also as nervous as I was. I did my best, and thankfully, I landed in second place. I was kind of disappointed I couldn't advance to the next level. I thought I let my teacher down. So as I approached him nervously, I was about to say another three words, words that once led me to be eaten by the system. I am sorry. But before I could even say it, he smiled at me. He jokingly told me that it was very fortunate because he didn't want to go further as we were missing several school activities already. I just laughed it out. I felt relieved that my teacher is optimistic and is purely supportive. With all that happened in those 5 to 6 years, I realized that as young as I was, I really needed someone aside from my parents who can understand me and guide me all throughout.